Welcome to episode 5 of Legacy in Action, where we pause to reflect on how unity, clarity, and stewardship shape not just our businesses, but the health of our families. To give us more insight on this topic, please welcome Jonathan Ramos.
If this is your first time joining us, I'm grateful you're here. And if you've been walking with us from the very beginning, thank you for staying. And before we begin, let me slow things down for a moment. Wherever you are right now, in your office, your car, or your home, I want to acknowledge something simple but profound. None of us leads alone, right? And none of us builds legacy by our own strength. Every insight I share here, every framework, every story, comes from years of walking, failing, learning, and being carried by grace. Grace that reminded me that leadership is not about control, but about stewardship, entrusted, not owned. So as we begin this episode, I invite you to listen not just with your mind, but with your heart, asking God quietly, what is it that you want to restore, realign, or strengthen in your family? Because legacy work is not rushed, it is revealed. In episodes 1 to 4, if you can remember, we built the inner foundation, which is self-leadership, a personal stewardship journey, and that is actually a discipline to lead from within. But here's the truth. A stronger leader can still lose a family, and a successful business can still collapse, not from the market, but from misalignment. So today, we shift that lens, not from me, but from we. So welcome to episode number 5, a unified cohesion. It's actually the pillar where families in business learn how to stay united while growing and how to protect relationships while making hard decisions. Did I say relationships? Yes, relationship that makes hard decisions. Because the greatest threat to generational wealth is often not outside the enterprise. It's actually inside each of our home. Well, we know that there are risks, but this one risk is what I call the hidden risk when the home stops from being a sanctuary. You know, I've walked with several families in business for more than 3 decades, from market vendors to multi-generational enterprises, and I have seen one pattern repeat itself with painful consistency. And when a family leads with unity and stewardship, generations flourish. But with leadership, loses clarity even when wealth fades. Yes, you've heard me right. Wealth fades. And many people think that legacy breaks because of competition or inflation or succession. But you know what? I've seen legacies fracture because of something quieter. Yeah, quieter. Like communication gaps, mismatched expectations, unclear roles, especially clashing personalities. There is also what you call generational value differences and emotional silence. Yes, emotional silence. These cracks don't explode on day one. They accumulate until the family systems become defensive, fragmented, or dysfunctional. And this is the strategy. The home meant to be a sanctuary and slowly become a tense environment. So the question becomes, how do we defend the family as a sanctuary for imperfect people? And while doing that, we're also pursuing excellence in business and stewardship. Well, that's the work of a unified cohesion. So the question now is, what is unified cohesion? And what it is and what it is not? Well, unified cohesion is not about everyone agreeing. It's actually about everyone understanding. And understanding the vision is actually equals to we are stewarding, right? So understanding the roles we each carry, understanding the rules of engagement on how we decide, how we disagree, and how we repair. because too many families inherit ownership but never inherit alignment. And you know that without alignment, wealth divides faster than it multiplies, correct? Hence, the unified cohesion should be a discipline, or I would say is the discipline of turning co-owners of wealth into co-stewards of a shared future. It's where succession stops being a one-time event and becomes a daily practice of alignment, action, and accountability. Now, let's look into the chaotic part. You know, those problems where you call it silent wars within the family. And it happens when clarity becomes compromise. Because clarity actually is never built from within. So in Legacy in Action, I wrote a chapter with brutal honesty about what happens when shared hands in business slowly turn into silent wars. Not because families are broken, but because clarity was never built. Example in chapter 3, it says when hustle becomes a struggle for fairness. For many of you who have read the book, this is very relatable and you can, agree on me on this. You see, in that chapter, I talk about sibling rivalries and the tension that grows when fairness is assumed but never defined. And when authority is clear and when emotions go underground, that's when you see positive change coming in. And here's that uncomfortable lessons that I'd like to share with you now. What families don't clarify early, they will fight about it later. Let me say it again. When families don't clarify early, they will fight about it later. Do you agree? And the longer the silence, the louder the conflict becomes. Hence, united cohesion is how we prevent that from happening. Not by pretending families don't fight, but by building structures, like the structures that help families fight fair, recover fast, and return to purpose together. After all, there is no perfect person, neither there's a perfect family, right? And so this time, I would like to provide you with 6 anchors of a unified cohesion. And let me say this, that, the 6th anchor is actually a practical system that you can easily implement. So here it is. Yes, simple, but might be difficult to implement, and you don't want to neglect it. First is shared vision, one direction. What does it mean? Well, to answer that, I'd like to say that if the family cannot answer why we exist together, decisions drift. So you might want to ask yourself, what legacy are we building? Or what future do we choose together? How do we define success beyond profit? These questions are very important because vision is not a slogan. It is a decision filter. Moving on to anchor number 2, I'd like to specifically say that clear roles reduce conflict. Yeah, reduce conflict. Why? Because most conflict is not actually personality. It's role confusion. For example, who decides? Who executes? Who supports? What are we accountable for? Clarity doesn't remove emotion, right? But it prevents emotion from becoming chaos. But on anchor 3, this is anchor 3, aligned values leads to unified behavior. Why? Because values must become operational, not decorative. If respect is a value, how do we speak when we disagree? Or if excellence is a value, how do we correct performance without humiliating, especially when you are giving feedback to your loved ones? And if family first is a value, what does that mean in hiring or in compensation and boundaries? As you know, Values shape culture, and culture shapes outcome. Moving on to anchor number 4, governance as guidance, not control. You see, governance is not about controlling people. It's about protecting relationships from policies, forums, and agreements that create fairness and predictability. They depersonalize issues. Good governance says, let's not attack each other. Let's follow what we agreed on. On anchor number 5, communication protocols, safe conversations, families don't break because they talk too much. They break because they talk without safety. And cohesion builds habits like active listening, structured dialogue, clarity before reaction, non-destructive feedback. So safety is not softness. Safety is what allows truth to surface without destroying trust. Now let's move on to anchor number 6, stewardship mindset beyond ownership. This is actually the deepest shift from what is my share to what is my responsibility. You see, ownership thinks entitlement, but actually stewardship thinks continuity. And continuity is the true definition of legacy. On how cohesion produces good results, I'd like to label that with what's the promise? When you embrace cohesion, what is the outcome? You see, when unified cohesion is built, something powerful happens. For example, the imperfect individuals become aligned partners. We all want that, right? Second, conflict becomes a catalyst for maturity. We also want that. But this third one is that succession becomes a culture and not an event. And business becomes a platform for purpose and not resentment. And finally, the home, yes, our home, returns to being a sanctuary of strong, stable, and secure family. So, in summary, I'd like to believe, and hopefully I can influence you, that cohesion is actually a competitive advantage to every family that no one and no downturn can destroy. Because, any markets, when you invest your money, can change. But an aligned family, guided by shared purpose, can adapt, ensure, and rebuild. So, unified cohesion is actually a structure. It is a culture, it is discipline, and it is actually love. Love turned into a system. Now, for our reflection, allow me to actually encourage you to have this quick exercise. Let's make this practical. You agree? Yeah, you want to actually try to see if, the concept, the best practices that I've shared, with you are something that, can really create value to each one of you, especially if you are a family in business. So here are 3 questions to ask as a family this week. Do we have one clear shared vision or a multiple private visions? Second is, are our roles clear or are we operating on assumptions? Many times, when many family members who are really very productive, working together, they may be operating a lot of assumptions, and it's difficult. It's much more beautiful, and united if we all can actually have that level of, communication to make sure that we all see the same, direction. And the third one is, do we have a safe way to address conflict, or do we avoid until we explode? If any answers feels uncomfortable, Don't panic. That discomfort is not failure, right? It's an invitation to design, because unity isn't the absence of conflict. Unity is a presence of alignment. But here's the truth. I've learned the hard way. And even the best structures can become rigid. And every unity can turn into control. And even vision can drift into pride, unless it is anchored in something higher than ourselves. And that's why in episode number 6, faith integration is not optional. It is essential. Why? Because systems align behavior, but faith, lived with humility, aligns the heart. Can I say it again? Faith, lived with humility, aligns the heart. So join me next time as we explore how faith grounds leadership, softens power, and sustains unity when pressure rises. Until then, lead gently, decide wisely, and steward what God has entrusted to you. Because legacy does not begin with wealth, it begins with unity, practiced daily, designed intentionally, and stewarded together. This is Legacy in Action. This has been John Ramos. Thank you very much.
True legacy is formed in the daily practice of unity. Join me next time as we reflect on how faith anchors the heart and sustains leadership over time. This is Legacy in Action. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends who will benefit from these insights.